to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Hello, Miami Dolphins fans, and thank you for listening to another episode here of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast. I am joined, as I am each and every week, by Josh Moser of WSVN 7, South Florida's #1 news station. Josh, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Happy New Year, everybody. How are you, Mike?
I am doing fantastic. And, if you would have asked me months ago, week 18, the Dolphins would have a meaningful game, I would have said you're crazy. But here we are. We have a meaningful game to open up 2025, and we're going to talk about all that, talk about, of course, Tua and the hip injury. But before we get to that, a quick word from our sponsor.
The DolphinsTalk.com podcast network is sponsored by Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, the Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, and all of the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, a birthday gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive, Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. Not in South Florida? No worries. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home, and they'll ship it to you. International fans, too. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com.
Okay, so we got a bunch to talk about. Before we get to Tua, because I know that's going to be the topic everyone wants to hear, let's talk a little bit about the 20-3 win against Cleveland. Cleveland looked like a team that didn't want to be there, and the Dolphins took advantage of that, which they should. And I thought they played fantastic. Special teams, I thought they played fantastic on defense, and I think the offense played well enough. I know they were 2 of 11 on third down, but they didn't turn it over. They didn't make any mistakes, and Tyler Huntley played well. What are some of your thoughts on that win?
Well, I mean, the Browns are clearly tanking. They wanted no part of that game. They were trying to lose that football game. So, to me, it's you should have won more than 20-3. I know that fans probably don't want to hear that. Positives. Tyreek Hill probably had his best game since week 1, and he did it without Tua, which is great. And a little breaking news from Miami football when we're recording this here. The college getting rid of their defensive coordinator.
I mean, not a shock. He was terrible, but yes.
Somebody had to take the ball. But,
that's right.
Speaking of, Anthony Weaver has, there's been up and down performances. And, look, you shut down the run game. You made this team one-dimensional. You got to give a shout-out to Emmanuel Ogbah, who was drafted by the Browns in the second round, comes back, has a sack. Big game against his former team. He was pumped for this one. But overall, it's kind of like the same rhetoric. I hate to say it, Mike. It's, this is a playoff team, and you beat up on bad teams, and this is all good and well, but these aren't the types of games that you're really looking for. But I think it's a significant step anytime you can win without Tua. We know how important the backup quarterback position is, and it's nice to see when Devon Achane doesn't star, this team can do enough. Jonnu Smith is another guy. To me, he's your second half of the season MVP. I think he's really come on in the second half. I wish Mike McDaniel would have figured out how to utilize him earlier in the year. He's been very consistent in the second half of the season, and I think, he's obviously set the tight end, touches, catches, and receiving yards records for a single season for a tight end in franchise history. But, a lot of good, but, let's see if you can close it out this week against the Jets. And I love that Chiefs game's at the same time. I think they did that on purpose. So, here's a chance to go out and see if you can beat a team most likely without Tua, and we'll find out if Aaron Rodgers is going to suit up for this one or not, too.
Yeah, and I think the Jets might be in a similar type situation that Cleveland was last week, because it seemed like the Jets versus the Bills, I saw a little bit of that game. They just didn't want to be there. And they really didn't try. And I think I wouldn't be shocked if the Jets kind of mail it in this week as well. We'll see. Maybe they get motivated to play. Spoiler, but I doubt it. Seems like there's a lot of friction inside that locker room with the Jets, where you got young players who've been in the league for a cup of coffee saying, yeah, I don't want to be here. That's never a good sign. If it's a veteran, that's one thing. When it's a guy who's like a year 2 or 3, that's never good when he's like spouting off like, I don't want to be here. Tua, hip injury this time. Meaningful games late in the year, and he's on the sideline. I think even, he's hurt. What are you going to do? He's hurt. He can't play. It is what it is. So, but I think even his most diehard supporters now are starting to be like, really? Now it's this. And it's like 2 years ago, he obviously missed the final 2 regular season games. He missed the playoff game. Last year, down the stretch, he didn't play well. And this year, again, week 17, week 18, not there. Even if they get into the playoffs, it sounds like he wouldn't even be ready to be in the playoff game. I mean, from what they're saying, it sounds like he's all done for the season without actually saying he's all done for the season. That's how I'm like reading between the lines here. What are your thoughts on this injury? And again, big games, and he's just not on the field.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating. Obviously, you had the concussion. You missed the 4 games earlier in the season. People still don't know what the next concussion is going to do. And that's just kind of the reality of football. And, for me, when Chris Grier drafted him 5th overall. Everyone can have the Justin Herbert argument, whatever you want to say, but they knew that this, hip was an issue, and we know that it's the same hip, but we know that it's completely unrelated to the hip issue that he suffered at Alabama. That was Mike McDaniel on Monday saying that. But, you just hope that the guy can stay healthy. And, if you look at the teams that are winning and they have consistency at their quarterback and they've got consistency in their offensive line. And the offensive line we know is, constructed in a way that, the team feels happy with, but obviously there are shortcomings in how they've done things there, and that needs to be severely addressed in the season. But when you have a $200 million player, and he's not on the field at the most important time of the season, I mean, this is when you need to be at your best. And unfortunately, they're not. And, until this gets fixed, this team is going to continue to not win playoff games.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it is, at least in the eyes of some fans, and I'd even say in my eyes, is he doesn't protect himself. In that, the week 2 game versus the Bills, he should have, after everything he's gone through the previous few years, he didn't slide. And that was a big reason why he got that injury. This injury, now when you go back and see when it actually happened, again, kind of playing reckless. I mean, he's not built like these other quarterbacks. He's smaller. He's more fragile, which I know he'd probably flip out if he heard that, but it's just the truth. And he plays kind of reckless and doesn't protect himself. And he brings a lot of this on himself with these injuries where they could be avoided. But really, the only year he stayed healthy was the year he put on weight and the year he was motivated to get a big payday. And once he got the big payday, kind of like he fell back into every bad habit he did when he was getting injured previous to 2023. And here we are again this year with a concussion, another hip injury. And I guess my question is, do you think Tyler Huntley, I know he played great for the Browns, but again, the Browns were a dead team. Do you think he's shown enough to where you would pay him to be the number 2 quarterback next year? Or they got to get someone better? In my opinion, they got to get someone who's better, because if you can't trust a quarterback, if he's going to miss, 5-6 games a year, like he does most years, to step in and actually play. And I don't know if Huntley's that guy. What are your thoughts on Huntley as a number 2 moving forward?
I mean, he still struggles to get the ball vertically down the field. And I mean, that's really the name of the game. But with this offensive line and how it's predicated, they don't do that. So he's a good fit for this offense, much more so than Skylar Thompson. I expect him to be, out the door. There was an interesting report that I saw where the Dolphins reportedly were trying to make a trade for Andy Dalton with the Panthers midseason. And he's got a contract up. So the Red Rifle, stepped in for a little bit for Bryce Young. But again, you're not really helping your situation here. So I think, this is a good audition for Snoop. I mean, you forget that he was a Pro Bowler a few years ago, backing up Lamar Jackson. Granted, a lot of people, just kind of dropped out and he just fell into that Pro Bowl spot, but he is still a Pro Bowler. And look, he's from South Florida. He wants to be here, and it always helps when you find players that want to be here. But the reality is you've got to produce on Sundays. And, yeah, you beat a Browns team that was trying to tank. Now here's an opportunity to, really figure it out. You got a couple reps earlier in the season when you came in, were plucked off the practice squad from the Ravens. So to me, go have a good game here and give the Dolphins a reason to bring you back. However, I would like to see someone else in that position, someone that I think could really, step in right away, simply because of Tua's injury history. I mean, we're relying on this player to win, a couple games. If the Dolphins weren't 1-3 when Tua was out, I mean, this game they're already in. And when Tua came back, it was a heartbreaking loss against the Cardinals in his first game back, and just the mistakes have piled up. So you're looking for players that can eliminate mistakes and really help teams. And, for Mike McDaniel, we've known that he's got to call a different game when he's in versus when Tua's in. And Tua is the best at orchestrating Mike McDaniel's offense. So you're either going to put it on yourself, Mike McDaniel, and get a second offense that's going to fit Snoop Huntley or whatever quarterback you're going to in, or you're going to go out as an organization and say this player is the most similar to Tua, and we think that he would be the best fit for this offense. And I think they're probably going to bring in one of each, and I think they should have a quarterback competition for that backup spot. And, we'll see what happens.
We've spoken a lot in previous weeks about, Chris Grier, Mike McDaniel. I think it's safe to say now, they're coming back. And you mentioned the offensive line. With them coming back, do you think we're going to see, and I know you don't know this, but I just want to sort of hear your thoughts. We're going to see them have a philosophical change in how they approach the building of the offensive line, or are we in store for more of the same, or like, we're going to re-sign Wynn, we're going to re-sign Robert Jones, we'll have them compete for one spot, maybe we'll draft a guy to play the other spot, or maybe we'll sign some veteran in free agency, and we're not going to go spend big money on the offensive line. You guys are more worried about it than we are. We're fine with Patrick Paul at left tackle. We're fine with Austin Jackson. We're fine with Aaron Brewer. We'll, patchwork together some guys. Or do you think they'll have a philosophical change? Like, we really got to invest in some guards here and make a change? Or is this going to be more of the same, reshuffle the decks, the chairs on the yacht type of thing, and like no real change is coming?
Yeah, I mean, obviously offensive line is the biggest need right now for this team, and you're also going to need some help on the defensive line too. I mean, I've said this before on the podcast. It's the hardest players to find in the NFL are big guys that can move on both the offensive and defensive line. And when you feel that you have a special player, you need to pay that player, you need to get him, and they are at a premium. I mean, you look at the best teams in the league, they have continuity on that offensive line. And, Robert Jones is a nice player. Liam Eichenberg was a high draft pick that really didn't live up to his draft slot, in my opinion. However, in his defense, he played every single position on that offensive line. So he was brought in for that versatility. But you want a guy that you can rely on and keep Tua clean. And you also need guards where you can run the ball through the A gap, which this team really can't do based off of the players. Now, we understand the offense is predicated on getting it outside, but if you want to win games in cold weather and at the end of the season, and if you really look at the playoff teams, Baltimore outside, Bills outside, Kansas City outside, I mean, that's who you have to beat. And you honestly have to structure your roster to go ahead and beat and compete with those teams and the outside zone. Unless you're going to play in Miami and get that number one seed, it's going to be very difficult to run the ball in those types of games in December and January at the most important time in the season. So they need to address the offensive line. You've got to find someone to replace Calais Campbell as well. You need help at linebacker. That's a mess.
Safety's the biggest mess.
The safety's the biggest mess. And I'm curious to see what happens with Javon Holland. I know that he wants to stay here. I don't know if he'll command the $20 million a season he thought he was going to before the beginning of the year. But, if you can get him at a decent price, that might give you more money to spend on the offensive line. But you're going to keep Austin Jackson coming off of, off of injury. I mean, you don't know. I would assume that Teron Armstead would be done after this year. An absolute warrior, in my opinion. He's a Hall of Famer, and it's amazing. He's got a serious injury right now that he's trying to play through. And he played more games than people expected. I think people were expecting him to play 10 games, and he surpassed that. So Aaron Brewer's done a nice job. But you have so many needs on this team, and you've got to hit on your draft picks. You look at the better teams in the league, especially when you have a $200 million quarterback, you've got to have those young players impact winning right away. And, Devon Achane's really been the only player that we've seen do that. And, he should. He's a high draft pick. Unfortunately, Jaylen Phillips has been injured. Jaylen Waddle's been good. They just repaid him. Chop Robinson came on here in the second half of the season, but I mean, you need someone to pair with him, and he's got a lot of growth to get there. But you need a guy that evokes fear on the other side of the ball. So we have the offense and defense on the other team. Like, we have to figure out how to stop that guy. And then if they double team that guy, you got to make sure that you have other players in that depth to, take advantage. And the good teams have that. And the good teams, like the Detroit Lions, have overcome all sorts of injuries, and they're fortunate to. And, that's what you're looking to do. And right now, this roster is nowhere near that. And, it leaves a lot to be desired based off of what you have in this division, in the conference. And then you forget, the Bengals, how good they are and what a terrible year they had. They're going to be right back in the mix next year too. So, you've got a gauntlet of teams. And as long as Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes are in the AFC, you're kind of on the outside looking in regardless. And maybe that's the rationale, Mike. It's just like, no offense to Tua, but those four quarterbacks are, better than him, and it's the most important position in football.
Yeah, once again, the problem with Tua is it's not even his play. It's just he's never on the field to play. And if you're not on the field to play, it's just tough as an organization to have any consistency or to be a threat to any of those teams because, I heard Chris Sims last week, or it was after the Houston game, said, your highest paid player shouldn't be your biggest question mark as well. And for the Dolphins, their highest paid player is the biggest question mark as well. And that's the problem. He can play great. He can have a 72.4% completion percentage. None of it matters if you're not on the field in big games. And yes, we have to cross the bridge of winning in the cold, and he's got to beat teams that are good. But if he's not out there, we can't even have those conversations because he's not on the field. And that's the problem. Now, when you start looking at the future in this team, there's two moves, I think, which kind of clear up their issues with the cap in a big way, which is Armstead, even if he wants to come back, I don't think he'll be back in Miami because they have to move on from that contract. And because they're sort of pigeonholed with Patrick Paul just being an offensive tackle, not being able to move anywhere else, I think you have to have a spot for him. So I know Armstead's back. And also Chubb here not being activated, post-June 1st cut opens up $18 million. I think there's a 0% chance Bradley Chubb is here next year, which also, it does hurt them in a way because, again, Jaylen Phillips tore his ACL. That's a 10 to 12-month injury. He got hurt in October. Jaylen Phillips might not be ready for the start of the 2025 season, so they might go into next season in the same boat they were in this season with Chubb gone. Phillips, he'll come back when he's ready to come back, but I don't know how you pay Chubb when you have this salary cap issue, and if you cut him post-June 1st or you cut him and then have it be a post-June 1st cut, you get $18 million after June 1st, which doesn't help you in March when you want to sign players, but it does alleviate the cap issue. So I think those two guys for certain are gone. We'll see about Holland, what they do there. Kendall Fuller is due to make like $9 million. He got hurt so much this year. They ain't paying him $9 million, so he'll be gone. But so the issue with the cap can get cleared up with just like 2 or 3 real moves, which are kind of easy to make. But yeah, I think when it comes to the offensive line, I know fans are like, well, now they're going to really build it. I'm not so sure. I would not be shocked if they re-sign Wynn. I would not be shocked if they re-sign Jones. I think Liam has played his last game here once the season ends. But I think they still might go, cheap's probably the wrong word, but they still might be hold the same philosophical mindset of we're not going to invest in guards, and we'll sort of patchwork that together, which I think will be the detriment and the eventual downfall of these two people whenever it comes, because we've seen this offensive line isn't tough enough, isn't strong enough, isn't physical enough, and I don't know if we're going to see the changes all fans are hoping for. That's my fear. I hope I'm wrong, as always.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting.
I mean, you look at the Shanahan, offense, which essentially, this is a very similar version to, and what they did against Detroit last night, and how they maneuver their pieces with a similar quarterback, Brock Purdy, to Tua. I would kind of equate them. I hate to say it, they kind of do similar things, and that's the mold. And then with Anthony Weaver, it's can you hold a team to under 25 points, which they've done multiple times this season. And it's interesting to me because it's such a copycat league, and then now it's turning into baseball a little bit with all these analytics where the top running backs this year were outgaining the top wide receivers, which is a new fad. That's been the opposite trend in recent years. So you're going to move on from Raheem Moser. He's probably gone, and then you're going to go with Jaylen Wright and Devon Achane as your two backs. So there's just so many question marks for Dolphins fans, but it's almost like, and as an organization, I'm wondering, like, look, like Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs are here, like Allen's here, like what are we, like, really, what is our ceiling? Like, what is a real?
There's no identity anymore. They had one a couple of years ago. Now they don't have any identity because teams have caught on to this offense. And before it was speed, we're going to beat you with the big plays down the field, Hill, Waddle, throw it quick, spread you out, score points. That's gone. Teams have caught on to it. They've stopped it. And they have to come up with who this team is to its core. It's never going to be a power team. It's never going to be a physical team. Teams have taken away the speed aspect to a point. And what's their identity? What's their bread and butter? Until they answer that question, yeah, we're spinning our wheels in the mud.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's why fans are so frustrated. It's because, you've seen that offensive side of the ball. Defensively, you brought in a Ravens, defensive coordinator where historically the Ravens defense have had these long rangey guys. They've been extremely physical. And, like I would say that, they're like their defense now, or like the Steelers defense, over the years, they're just not there yet. And yeah, it's Dolphins fans, it's looking like it's going to be 24 years. 25 years. So 2000, last playoff when yesterday, 30th.
Yesterday, 30th.
So, Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
New Year.
Last question here as we wrap up. You mentioned Anthony Weaver, and there's going to be a lot of head coach openings here. I know in the past he's gotten some interviews. You think he's going to get a hard look here to be a head coach with one of these teams that might have an opening? I think he'll get some interviews. I don't know if he'll get a job, honestly, because I know some of these teams who have openings want guys with experience and maybe want guys with more of a proven track record than maybe he has at this time. I think someday he might be a head coach, but I don't know if it's right now. But you think he'll get some interviews and have a hard look here to be a head coach with some of these teams that are going to have a lot of openings here?
I think it's worth having a conversation, and I hate to bring this up, but it's just the reality of the world that we live in, especially with the Rooney Rule. And this may be, I think Brian Flores should also get some looks with the job that he's done in Minnesota. Whatever you think of what he did here in
he's got to drop that
Miami.
lawsuit. If he drops that lawsuit, he'll probably have a job like tomorrow. If he's going to keep that lawsuit up, which, look, I understand, and he has every right to do it. I didn't live his experience. But I think if he drops a lawsuit, he probably will get a job. It's going to be tough for him to get a job with that open lawsuit. So that's just probably the reality.
Yeah, and I mean, these are like types of politics that maybe fans don't really understand. And so I'm really happy that you brought that up. But I mean, look, Anthony Weaver is highly coveted. I mean, this may sound, here's a radical take in my opinion. To me, it would almost be better if Anthony Weaver took more of a head coaching role here in Miami. Mike McDaniel step back a little bit from the head coaching responsibilities and focus more on the offense.
Yeah.
And, looking at Mike McDaniel this year, and I've talked to some people around the league, he just looks exhausted. The man is a relentless worker. He's in there at 3 a.m. and he's doing everything he can to put his team with how he feels in the best position. But I think, with things that we're seeing on Sundays, I think time may be better served in a different way. And if you can put more responsibility on a Frank Smith or Anthony Weaver, just to free yourself up to really hone in your system. I think that would be beneficial. So I think I would love to see the continuity stay, but I would love to see some of the inner workings of the roles change. And I think that might eventually allow Anthony Weaver with more responsibility here to eventually get that head coaching job, which I know players love him. I know organizations love him. And, I could see that certainly in his future. And I think, unfortunately, the trend is you're still going with offensive coaches for head coaches.
Well, here's the thing, too, with Mike. And I don't know what their process is now, but what we saw versus Cleveland was pretty much a clown show. Who's ever telling him to challenge plays, that's got to change, because it almost felt like he was throwing a temper tantrum on the sideline where I lost the first one, literally 2 minutes later. Well, I'm going to challenge this one. I'm going to win one. No, you're not, Mike. You are the single worst in the past 3 years, the single worst head coach when it comes to challenges. 4 for 18 with the 2 he lost. He's down to like under 25%. He can't win them. And I don't know what their process is. And I know as a head coach, he technically has to throw the flag, but who's ever telling him to throw the flag, that person can't do that job anymore because it's not working. And if I had to guess, it's probably the special teams coordinator, but I don't know that to be true. But someone else has to tell him when to challenge, because that process stinks on toast.
I'll say this. When Mike McDaniel was hired, there was a person on the staff from Flores that was here.
I know who it is too. I know.
And the person is now at another place where the head coach is gone. So this person will be either staying there or looking for a job. And I know that he would love to come back, but I agree.
Literally anybody can do this better than him at this point. And who's ever telling him, like, first off, the score was 13-3. Cleveland's not a threat. Why are you challenging anything? You want your thought process. Let's get this game over. Let's get on the plane, get back to Miami.
Yeah.
I don't need this yard. Who cares? They're not going to score. Just punt, play defense, get the game over with. Challenge a spot, which almost never works. Almost never works. Challenge it. Okay. Now he's challenging a backward pass. Why? You didn't need the ball. It's 13-3. Once again, what are they? Knocking it? It's like, who cares? And he's challenging that. Once again, a low percent. The referee was even smirking when he said the previous, like, you had no chance of winning this. And no, he's going to challenge them both.
Yep. I mean, and I know that's not coming from him because that's someone else doing it. And I agree that player, the person, needs to be evaluated. And you've been up with me in the press box. If you've been in the coaching box, I mean, there's multiple TVs from every angle. The coaches have the all 22 film as well, where you can see it from above. You have every piece of technology. As long as you know and understand the rules, that you should be able to make a correct judgment based on fact. And it seems very simple, but
it does.
This is something the Dolphins struggle with.
And a lot of these too sort of comes down to situation. Like, again, on Sunday, there's no reason to challenge any of these plays. The game was over. Why you even? What's the point? And you
play every down like it's your last.
Exactly. You would have thought they were down 13-3, not up 13-3. I'm like, what's this guy doing? And it's like, read the situation, know what's going on, watch the game. But unless I would never challenge anything in the first half unless it's like a turnover where they get the ball to like the 1, or you have a chance to get the ball to, like, okay, that's a something huge. But spot, where the ball's lined, it should be at the 28, but they put it to 27. Like, who gives a crap? It's not worth wasting or the risk of losing a challenge over a yard that's inconsequential in the big picture of the game. But I don't know.
You got a resume ready? I mean,
you know what? I'd be fired after a day because I talk too much. Mike, what are we doing here? I didn't go to Yale, but I know this is stupid. But bye, you're fired. Okay, I'd be gone after a day.
Mm-hmm.
My sharp tongue would get me in trouble. But okay, Josh, have a happy New Year. Thanks for joining us. Everyone,
I like
be
the
sure.
sharp tongue personally.
Yeah, I know. Everyone, be sure to watch Josh on WSVN, South Florida's #1 news station. Follow him on all social media at the Mose Knows, and we'll talk next week either about a Dolphins playoff game. Or maybe we'll just we'll put a bow on the season and put together like a wish list of what we want to see in the offseason or something. We'll do something like that. I don't know.
How about a boot and just leave the imprint?
Yeah, pretty much a boot.
Yeah.
And we'll see if our quarterback, who knows what's going on there, but we'll talk about the quarterback, I'm sure.
But real quick, if they win, they're going to Highmark Stadium to see Josh Allen, where they haven't won since 2016. So
here's what's funny.
Ready.
So I did the post-game show with Tom. Tom's in Rochester. I'm up here in lovely Syracuse, not far from Buffalo. We're like, look, if somehow the Broncos lose, Miami wins, it's like, should we try to get media access to go to this game and cover? I mean, the odds of winning are probably something like that. And we were like, you know what? It's not because for him it's like an hour drive. For me, it's like 2.5.
Yeah.
We might. I might have to contact someone with Dolphins, which I might need your help to get this. We might.
I got you.
We might try to
Salvatore's
get in.
is the hotel where you want to be in Buffalo.
Yeah.
I'll hook you up.
All right. So if we get in, yeah, we might go and cover this because it's like, why not? Hey, law averages. We got to beat them eventually. We got to law averages.
Yeah. Hey,
might not be this year.
There's a chance.
Yeah. Who knows? All right,
Oh,
Josh. Thanks so
God.
much, everyone. Have a good day. We'll talk to you again after a while.
See ya.